Welcome back, Palladium fans. I'm here with Kevin again, and today we're taking a step through a mirror darkly, and we're going to be talking about a line that I love, that I've played a lot, and is in a spectrum of unique games. This one stands out as another really kind of unique concept, and that's Nightbane. So, Kevin, how did Nightbane come about? I know, CJ, it was his idea. Did he come with the whole idea fully fleshed out? Did you?
For the initial couple of books, he had pretty clear idea of what he wanted to do, and we talked about it, and I liked it. And he turned in some great stuff. We have some great art in that book too, by Arcade Arts and Ramon Perez. And it just came together really nicely. The cover. I wish I had bought this damn cover.
Oh yeah,
by Brom.
Yeah,
it's a great piece, and really captured what Nightbane is. And it was just, he came to me with these ideas. We batted around. He wanted to call it, I think he wanted to call it the Unborn. And it sounds kind of cool, but it doesn't really make sense.
Because you're really humans who then manifest this new persona.
Right. They're almost born twice. It's almost like twice born.
Yeah.
And I had
one against taken. So
I back in the 1970s, I did a fanzine called Night Spawn.
Oh.
And I was like, hey CJ, I'm nixing the Unborn, but I got this great name that I've been saving forever. I've got this amazing logo by Tom Warzakowski when he was a fledgling letterer and logo designer, and let's call it Night Spawn.
So you've got the poster behind you of Night Spawn. Now, you ran into some trouble with that name, and interestingly, there's a link through the guy who designed the logo.
Yeah, it was very bizarre. So we came out with the book Nightbane and printed, I want to say 8,000 or 10,000 copies, because we had a lot of faith in it, and it's selling pretty well. And we get a call from an attorney who says, "Hi, I represent McFarlane Toys, and we want you to cease and desist because we feel that Night Spawn infringes on the Spawn trademark." And we were pretty surprised and taken aback by that. I knew a couple of people who worked there. And, I don't want to go into all the legalities and bring up any hard feelings on anybody's part, but we didn't feel like he had a strong case. My attorney said, I'm confident we would win this lawsuit. And I said, and what are we talking? Because at this point, Todd McFarlane's big time.
Yeah. I mean,
and plus I'm a fan. I don't want to, I love Todd McFarlane's art. And I said, well, what's this going to cost? And he's like, well, we can probably keep it under $300,000. And I just sat back and went, even if we won, is it worth that?
Yeah.
We weren't sure how well this, new fledgling game would do. And I came up with the idea of calling it the Nightbane, which I thought actually fit better because they are the bane of the Nightlords and their whole demon host. So we just changed the name. CJ wasn't too thrilled about it, but it just seemed like the smart thing to do. We settled, very reasonably, and Todd came at us, or his attorney came at us like a freight train. But after we got talking, everything got more I don't know if friendly would exactly be
At least cordial, right? Like
cordial,
yeah.
and reasonable. And, we changed the name with the second printing. They allowed us to do that. So there's like 8 or 10,000 copies of the book out there as Nightspawn, which makes it kind of rare and on the collector's market. And it became known as Nightbane.
So you've got and the gentleman Todd who designed the logo for Nightspawn all those years ago.
Oh, that was Tom Orzechowski. As it turned out, Tom Orzechowski is the guy who designed the Spawn logo and in all the related logos. And I believe he still letters the Spawn comic book to this day.
That is a small world.
It is. Well, I mean, Tom was, in fact, it's kind of funny because I always think of Tom Orzechowski and Arvell Jones and a couple other people as sort of my early mentors. Because as you guys all know by this point, I wanted to be a comic book creator. I wanted to draw and write comic books. And Tom was, I want to say, probably 4 or 5 years older than us, me and Alex. And Alex had met them somehow. They were fellow Detroiters. There was Tom Orzechowski, Mike Kacharski, Joe Wesson. We would later, through those guys, meet Richard Buckler, who was sort of a big-time Marvel artist for a long time. He's the guy who created Deathlock.
Oh, yeah.
It was just that whole crew. Arvell Jones, who was a real mentor to me art-wise, insisted I learn how to ink with a brush. And I wanted ink with a pen or rapidographs or both. And he's like, no, you got to do it this way. And everyone inks with a brush. And like right as I mastered the brush, like everyone in comics moved to pen and ink. But that's okay because I love inking with a brush, and it's so fast and natural. I love inking with a brush, and not everyone inks with a pen. I mean, there's still guys out there who ink with a brush. But so they were kind of our mentors, especially Ors, as we called him, because Tom lived. Probably it seemed longer than it was because Alex and I had to take the bus most of the time, but he was probably 10 minutes away from us. Okay. And he was really great in encouraging our art, as was Arvell Jones, and it was really nice. So it was just kind of weird that Tom Orzechowski did the logo, and which we never got to use on the book. We had planned on it to use on like source books and stuff. And never got that far because Todd jumped on us to please don't do that. So, but at least they were reasonable, and like I said, I think Nightbane fits better. Although it's funny, there's a certain number of fans out there who are like, oh, Todd McFarlane, Nightspawn. And it's like, come on, guys, he's trying to protect his trademark. And
you know what? You and I have had a number of conversations, and what's interesting to me is that until you find yourself in the position of having to defend a trademark or IP, or find yourself in stewardship of someone else's trademark or IP, some of these things seem really bizarre. And then you get into it, and once you're inside that bubble, you're like, oh, all right, this makes sense. There may not be any animosity. It may just be, hey, if I don't do this, then I'm not being a good steward, or I'm leaving myself open to future legal actions.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. So there were no hard feelings on our part with Todd. I mean, we weren't happy about it, and we had to come up with a name that kind of fit nicely so we could make easy changes. Yeah. Like I said, Nightbane, I know it just popped into my head. Yeah. And I'm like, hey, that works, and it fits the Nightspawn space. Yeah. We'll just search and replace.
So Nightbane comes out right around the same time that the urban fantasy hits the RPG zeitgeist. We start seeing a lot more dark and alternate real world magic and monster filled settings coming out. we see things like, White Wolf takes off, and we see, a lot of other companies doing things like Cult. But what's unique about Nightbane to me is this almost Clive Barker-esque take on urban fantasy. It has far more in common with things like Hellraiser than it has in common with kind of classical myth and legend, a lot of the things you were doing with Rifts and Palladium, while still interpreting those things as, well, they were really Nightbane all along. So what was that? I mean, and the art reflects this. There's some truly horrific, like wonderfully drawn, but very body horror, very Cenobite kind of art pieces in there. What was your take on this book when you kind of started to see all of the weird body horror tables and art orders were coming in? You were starting to see this thing really kind of materialize as this very dark. I personally think it's the darkest line that Palladium publishes. Like the themes that it deals with, the art. Again, lots of body horror kind of just writ large on this thing.
Well, so first of all, a very astute observation about Clive Barker.
Okay.
Because it's interesting. CJ kind of bounced between different horror genres. Okay. So, for example, he was a huge fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, that kind of thing, the Joss Whedon TV shows. And then he also loved Clive Barker. And in fact, one of the core inspirations for him, I think, was Nightbreed.
Yeah.
The book, because I think the book is more scary and suspenseful than the movie was.
Yeah.
The movie was almost like X-Men horror.
Yes. No, 100%.
And CJ wanted to really come across with something that was dark and scary and horror, very much a horror type book. And I love that idea. Up to that point, we had done Beyond the Supernatural, but this was like another step. And I enjoyed the Hellraiser movies. I never read the books. My wife, Marianne, had and loved them. And so we were all on board with this. I mean, I'm the guy who explained to Brom what we wanted. And, I'm the guy sending out the
art orders,
assignments for the artwork. And, RK Post was just perfect at the time. And he really understood what we wanted. So did Ramon Perez.
Yeah.
And all of our artists, really. They got it. So, yeah, it really comes across as this dark, scary, sinister, because it's like horror meets dark conspiracy meets, dimensional secret invasion. I mean, it has little elements of They Live, and which may be more of my influence because I love that movie. But so did CJ, as I recall, and so yeah, it was just something different. I mean, something I don't think people get is as a creator, because I have people ask me, how come you kind of do all kinds of things and not just like riffs or Heroes Unlimited or whatever? And it's because as a creator, at least for me as a creator, I like so many genres and I've been influenced by so many different mediums and medias, and I don't want to do just one thing. I don't want to be Sir Conan Arthur Doyle who just writes Sherlock Holmes. I don't mind if I'm most famous for riffs or being the publisher of Ninja Turtles before anyone else, the RPG, before anyone else realized how big it was going to be. That's fine. But creatively, I don't want to be constrained to just any one or two or even three genres. I like to do all kinds of different things. I like to stretch my wings and have fun. And I also like to give my writers and artists freedom. So when they come to me with a good idea, I'm all for it. We've got a couple of things in the pipeline that I think will surprise people when they come out, and they'll be like, "Whoa, we never thought you would do X." And it's like, well, see, you're wrong. I think sometimes people think they know what's going on back here,
Mm-hmm.
and they really have no no idea. And we don't want to really express all of our plans and what we want to do, because it could be years before we're actually able to implement them. And we also listen to our fans. We know what people want. And you're right. It seems to me probably the Hellraisers or movies were coming out around then. And one of my other favorite movies that came out in the 80s was Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh yeah.
And that's very, so yeah, when CJ came up with a bunch of these ideas, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And we did, and it's something very different. And then the whole urban fantasy thing just kind of developed a little after. It's weird. It seems like we're always on the cutting edge of concepts and stuff, and sometimes predate things.
Yeah, I think Nightbane came out, was one of the first games I remember where you played the monster, right? That became a big thing in the 90s. Oh, hey, we're going to play the monsters. I'm like, but we were like, have you guys heard of Nightbane? Like, it's right.
Yeah, I mean, certainly us and certainly the success of Vampire the Masquerade. Those two books in particular, or role-playing games, I should say. Those two worlds, I think, really helped push that in the role-playing arena.
Oh, yeah.
And the whole urban fantasy trend just grew and grew and grew, along with like steampunk and some other things. It just kind of became more and more popular. And unlike steampunk, I think urban fantasy is more popular than ever.
Oh, I would agree with that. I think steampunk, and I say that having worked on a steampunk game, Space 1889, like it's one of the original, kind of helped develop the idea of like the steampunk aesthetic. I think urban fantasy is far more popular than steampunk, and it's just it's ubiquitous in our culture, right? It's in movies, it's in books, it's in comics, right? I mean, Marvel was doing kind of the urban fantasy, and same with DC with some of their more magical characters, things like Constantine or the Marvel Knights line, where you would have like Blade or Doctor Strange in a lot of ways had
elements
kind of oscillated between cosmic magics and urban fantasy, right? Darkhold Redeemers, things like that.
But yeah, I mean, it makes sense because the people who don't really get into comic books could find that same kind of aesthetic in a lot of urban fantasy, because you're typically dealing with characters who are in their teens or early 20s. It's a diverse group of people. There's usually some sinister plot or villain or monster or conspiracy that's behind the thing. They're trying to discover themselves, and I loved all those elements. And that's more of a Marvel thing for me, where with like Spider-Man and X-Men, it's like, who are we? But every teenager, I don't know about you, JM, but I know when I was growing up, it was like, who am I? What do I want to be? And you struggle through love and romance and your first job and your second job and your third job and school and being accepted and figuring out who you are and where you want to go in life. And it's fun to have a game where that not only do you experience that, but you're the hero.
Yeah.
You're not just some confused kid. You're the hero. And I always love the concept from, starting with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the concept of you have to turn into a monster to be the hero.
Yeah.
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde wasn't really, that wasn't that hero aspect, but I love that duality. Here's one good, here's one evil. In Nightbane, I love the fact that you look like a monster, but you're the good guy.
Yeah.
And you fighting other monsters. I just love it. I just loved it. I loved everything about it. And that's why we did it.
All right, so you had to do a rebranding and a find and replace, which I hopefully went smoothly. I've heard horror stories from the TSR days where they did a find and replace to change mage to wizard, And it was in the very early days. And there was a book that went out with like, this spell does 5d6 to wizard because mage is part of that word. So hopefully removing spawn was far easier than
No,
that.
it went fine. Yep, it went fine. Yep.
And the game sold well because Nightbane has a lot of supplements. So you followed on the core book with several. I mean, there's really sort of a trilogy of the original supplements.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. So there was Between the Shadows, which was excellent.
Yes, and I love that cover.
It is excellent.
That cover is
yeah, I mean, come on, it deals with what? I mean, there's more information about the world and the Spook Squad, but then it also presents you the astral realm, which I love. That's, I mean, I jumped in and tweaked a bunch of stuff and made sure it worked game-wise, but that was CJ, that was genius. I loved it, his representation of the astral plane. And then same thing with the Dream Stream, that was CJ. Yeah. And I absolutely loved it. Like I said, I was a fan of Nightmare on Elm Street, and it just kind of had a little bit of that vibe to it. And it was just great. And then, there's more for the Nightbane. There's more Morphosis and other things. But it's just a really solid, fun book with a lot of ideas for adventure hooks.
Yeah, it fills a similar role to me to like... the first Rift Source book, which is like, hey, here's the stuff that we wanted to put in core book, but we had to cut for space or some ideas that we couldn't expand upon till now. But then you gave me one of my favorite books, which is the Nightlands, because I was captivated by that idea of this parallel world where the Nightlords are coming in. And yeah.
So we should probably, for viewers who aren't familiar with Nightbane, so the basic setting is that there's this parallel Earth, but it's like this constant, it's this world that's in a constant twilight state, and it's filled with your evil doppelganger. And they can see what's going on in our world through mirrors, and they're jealous. And again, because they're our evil twin, that this world is not a particularly nice or kind place. And it's ruled by the Nightlords and the Night Princes and their demonic minions like hounds and a whole series of other
horrific creatures.
Yeah, and nasty creatures. And what happens... And you never know, it's never quite revealed if the Nightlords were able to manipulate this or it was just some freak thing that happened. But it's your day goes by. Imagine like today, it's a beautiful day and, the sun is out and night falls and it's morning, but it's still night. Mm-hmm. Day doesn't come. And people start to freak out. Some people think it's the end of the world. Some people claim or insist that, monsters are crawling in the darkness. There's weird noises and screams and growls and howls and all kinds of shit. And everyone's really scared. After that next 24-hour period, the day returns and everything seems to be fine. Or is it?
Right.
Because... a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people insist that ever since what had become known as Dark Day, the world seems different. The world still feels a bit darker and scarier and sinister, and our governments and our police force seem more corrupt and blind to justice. What's that?
And some people have changed in a very sort of Day of the Body or Invasion of the Body Snatchers sort of way. Like, you're not the same person you were, Carl, before Dark Day.
Well, some people are and some people aren't. Right. And again, I love all these elements because Invasion of the Body Snatcher, which I realize is a short story or a novel by somebody. I love the original 1950-something movie. It gave me, as a kid, it just gave me nightmares perpetually. And, my mom and dad were like, why did we let this kid watch this movie? And because I would wake up screaming. And so, yeah, for a lot of people, it's like especially for our player characters. Gee, mom and dad, or maybe grandma and grandpa, or Uncle Benny, they just don't seem like they're the same. They seem like, I don't know, darker or meaner or corrupt or just awful people all of a sudden. And it's because during dark days, a lot of those doppelgangers came through the mirrors and grabbed mom and dad or Uncle Benny and pulled them into the Nightlands and took their place in our world. And then for a lot of other people, for the Nightbane, I mean, there you are going along, you're in high school, and you wake up one morning and you look in the mirror and there's this strange creature looking back at you. And you realize, holy crap, it's me. That's me in the mirror. But what have I become? And how did I become this? And what do I do now? And do I tell mom and dad? And, and some do and some don't. And the consequences can be bad, even if it really isn't real mom and dad. It gets worse if mom and dad are doppelgangers.
Because they know what's going on. Yeah.
On top of that, when you're a Nightbane, the Nightlords and their minions can sense you. And since you are the Bane of the Night, most Nightbane don't fully understand how this works, but the Nightbane likewise can sense Nightlords and their minions, even when they're in, some other form with shape changed into something else, which makes them, the Nightlords and Night Princes and Princesses, their main rivals, their main enemies, because they can see through the facade that they're trying to establish. And so Nightbane characters have their human facade. Like if J-M and I were both Nightbane, this is what we look like as humans. This is how we were born. This is what we look like. But when we fight the Nightlords or want to use one of our talents or other special power, we have to turn into our Nightbane self. And the Nightbane self is kind of reflective of the person's psyche. Maybe it's something they love. Like if you love motorcycles, you might be like a motorcycle centaur.
Yeah.
Or if you like guns, your arms may have guns built into them or turn into guns. Or, if you love reptiles, you might look like a snake person or a lizard person. Or if maybe you look like a werewolf or something completely fanciful, you look like a fairy. Yeah. And some Nightbane are beautiful, but most are, quite terrifying.
Yeah,
and that's something else they have to deal with.
They always felt awful to me in like the old English version of the world, like something that fills you with awe, whether that's horror or just immense beauty. They still fill you with this sense of dread because they're so inhuman and you are so, small compared to what you are seeing.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, like the X-Men or a group of heroes or mages, you start to uncover this whole sort of underworld that you never even knew existed. And whilst elements of it were there before Dark Day, they weren't there until after Dark Day. Yeah. And you don't know who you can trust. You don't know what's going on exactly. You have to figure out how to use your powers and abilities and find fellow Nightbane and other creatures of the night that are out there, who may be friends or enemies. Yeah, it's pretty epic stuff.
Yeah, there's so many elements, like you said, the dark conspiracy element, the dealing with. What does this mean that this is what my inner psyche looks like reflected on the outside? There's a lot of like personal angst and personal horror that you can delve into it, but also cosmic horror with the fact that like the Nightlords have begun a secret invasion of our world. And then,
and two, sometimes that psyche, that your inner self, maybe you're really shy, but you're Nightbane, you're a big bruiser. And whether you still have confidence or not as a Nightbane, that's, for the player and the characters to develop and figure out. But, sometimes the Nightbane is what you kind of aspire to be in a little bit of a horrific way. And other times it's just a reflection of the angst and terror and fears that are, buried deep inside the person.
Good stuff. I mean, we've talked about how Rifts has all of these themes woven through that you can, and then each book kind of focuses on like a different facet of it. Nightbane has a couple of very strong core themes that just run through the whole book. But then the third book that we get is Through the Glass Darkly, which again, kind of this idea that mirrors are the realm or the portals to other realms. I mean, again, we see that idea brought up a lot in urban fantasy.
Yeah, and I loved it. I think this is a really sometimes overlooked book.
Mm-hmm.
It was written by a different gentleman who went on, if I recall correctly, to work for George Lucas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's super well written. I mean, I contributed to it as well, but some of the main stuff was by this other gentleman, and it's really great. And there's some dark, really cool stuff in here, like flesh sculpting.
Yes.
There's some other new OCCs. There's a cyber mage. There's the mirror mage. So where Nightlands gives you more information about the Nightlords and that other demonic parallel dimension, this gives you more meat for other stuff to fool around with. There's like 40 or 50 new magic spells in here. There's magic charms and talismans and things. There's just all kinds of good things in this book, living pathways, which are portals to elsewhere. And much like the very first book, the core rule book, it really does focus on horror and weirdness and the macabre.
Yeah.
But it's epic. I think, I don't know, there's some great stuff in here you won't find in any other role-playing game.
Oh, yeah.
Even ours.
Now, then Nightbane kind of laid fallow for a little bit, but we got a couple of new books after. I was surprised to find out that, you guys were planning on publishing, Church of Light, and there was another one right around there too.
There's a couple. It's Shadows of Light.
Shadows of Light. That's what.
And for me, one of the real pivotal books. Like if you're looking to like, what do I need to play Nightbane? It's the core rules and the Nightbane Survival Guide.
Yes.
It's a great book written by Irvin Jackson and Mark Oberle. It gives you a lot of insight on the Nightbane. In fact, the whole book is basically about the Nightbane and their struggle to find themselves and figure out what they do. And it's got new talents and some new morphosis. And because that's what they call your Nightbane self. So this is your human facade, and when you turn to a Nightbane, it's called your morphos.
Yeah.
Which many Nightbanes start to think of as their true self.
Bruce Wayne puts on the mask to become Batman. Superman puts on the glasses to become Clark Kent. So are you Bob, or are you this Nightbane thing? And they wrestle with which is the real version of me, which isn't, which is the truest version of myself, which isn't.
And why there's been periods where nothing comes out for Nightbane and then suddenly there's a book or two is it's been hard to find someone who really understands that blend of horror and angst and the urban fantasy elements. So when CJ left the company to explore other possibilities, we had to kind of fill the gap. And I thought, oh man, we got the perfect guy.
Oh yeah, that's
Kevin Hassel, the guy who wrote this book. I mean, he knocked it out, I want to say, in a couple of months. And I get this manuscript and I'm like, holy, this is fantastic. And I'm like, yes, we've got the perfect guy to write Nightbane. And he was from England, as a matter of fact. And I get this, I forget whether it was a call or email. I think it was an actual telephone call. And he calls me up and says, I hope you won't be angry, but I've got this great opportunity with, George Lucas. And I don't remember if he actually went to Skywalker Ranch or what, but he had this great opportunity to do more, big things and make big bucks for big productions. And I'm like, how can I be angry?
Why would I be angry with you? Yeah.
I mean, holy Moses, good luck. Yes, we'll miss you. But, and he's like, maybe I could do another one. But, his price had like tripled. And I'm like, I don't know. And we decided not to. And, and then Irvin Jackson and Mark Oberle jumped in and did this. But again, Irvin had things he wanted to pursue on his own career, Mark as well. And so then Jason Vey had done an article or series of articles in the Rifter that we liked. And we said, why don't you expand on that? And he did. And that gave us Shadows of Light, which goes into some weird areas. I think it's in some ways it's not pure Nightbane. It kind of goes off on a couple of tangents. Like there's types of angels in here and that kind of stuff. And then Mark returned to do a giant compendium of morphosis and talents. And so it like contains all kinds of stuff that appeared in original books, kind of cleaned up and organized. And there's like, I don't know, pages and pages and pages of Morphos tables if you want to do random rolls. And there's additional stuff in here. There's like an appendix listing all the different morphoses and a list of all the talent. And plus there's like a ton of new talents.
So it's a little bit like the Powers Unlimited supplements for Heroes Unlimited. We're like, hey, here's a bunch of new things, but also we're going to consolidate the table for you so that you can have them in one spot.
So it's really handy and has sold very well.
Awesome.
So we're pleased with it, and we'd like to do more of Nightbane. I would like to do more of Nightbane myself. It's just there's so many other things, and it kind of gets back to what we touched on a little earlier. As a business, it's not just about, hey, let's do these source books. It's about, what's going to keep the company going. So we can do more source books. So for everything. And, that means focusing on the hotter sellers, which for years have been Rifts, Palladium Fantasy, to a somewhat lesser degree, Heroes Unlimited. Yeah. And then we still try to slip things in. So it's a little bit of a juggling act, and hopefully as Palladium rebuilds and gets stronger, we can surprise people with a lot of new cool stuff for
awesome.
All our game lines, including the Nightbane.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much. Next time we're going to be talking about the Rifter, which was the magazine for Palladium Books. I have quite a few of them. I used to have all of them, slowly rebuilding my collection. So, Kevin, thank you so much.
My pleasure, as always.